Hello, everybody. So I'm going to first start talking about Bell Hooks's Feminism is for Everybody. So, one of the things I really thought was important in the beginning that she said was kind of deciphering between revolution and reform. So, I think that right now, especially today, with how fast-paced everything is going, we need a revolution. One which includes everybody, irrespective of class, race, and gender. And when I say everybody, I mean like the kids, most importantly, the youth in today's society. Because as it was reiterated over and over again throughout the reading, all of the socialization of gender, of heteronormative values, and things of that nature start when we are young. It starts with our parents socializing us into believing things about gender that the rest of society deems to be true, although it might not be true. So if we're able to revolutionize with the youth and have them taking on their own viewpoints and values, then when they, or if they procreate, then this can just start a domino effect of breaking down these norms that aren't necessarily true, that people think need to be true, but they're not necessarily true. So it starts with children, goes to school, and then this sticks with them and it turns into adults and in the workforce. And being that a lot of people don't receive feminist messages or ever talk about feminism or learn about it if they don't go into academia, that is ignoring a large portion of the population who isn't privileged enough to go to a college that offers women's studies, or be in a neighborhood that has community events or community groups that directly relate to women's studies. So I think it's important to also start to reach the areas that are underserved in terms of feminist work or women's studies, because if we're just focusing on the people that are in academia, then we're not really getting the full spectrum of people that we need to be reaching, because just being in academia doesn't mean you want to learn about feminism, and not being in academia doesn't mean you don't want to learn about feminism. So I think we need to be touching on all aspects and not ignoring not delivering feminist work only to privileged people, which was alluded to in Hooks's work, that we must reach all aspects of community. We can't just be serving one community, and community is very important, as Hooks reiterates throughout the reading, and community involvement, community support. And she goes on to talk about how this community involvement support can lead to a higher level of consciousness. And I think that is very important in terms of everything, to have a higher level of consciousness. But I think that perhaps naming it that, like consciousness raising groups, I think is what Hooks had titled it in her work, is it's kind of scary. People might not necessarily even comprehend the fact that their consciousness level can be raised, or that they have multiple levels of consciousness and that they're only acting on one at all times. To dive deeper into yourself and really understand your full potential and your unlimited capabilities can be scary for people to comprehend. So I think the language that she uses is important. The consciousness raising groups, but I think that if it's possibly restructured or redefined in terms that are less scary, that people would be, more apt to act on that, or feel more inclined, to really check themselves internally in order to be better externally, I guess you could say. Raising your consciousness inside will have amazing effects on the outside, and then it can quickly spread from person to person. It doesn't. However, it's kind of difficult to raise your own consciousness level when you're living in a society and culture that is constantly abusing it. Whether that's through drugs, alcohol, negative thoughts, media, like how media portrays that you should be. All of these things directly impact your consciousness, whether you think it or not. When you are consuming alcohol every day, or you're taking, mind-altering substances that really change your consciousness in a spiritual level, it makes it more difficult to do it in a sober state of mind. Also brings up a great point when saying that socialization of sexism, or femininity, masculinity, all starts when we're young. I was alluded to that earlier about how your parents socialize you into these things, which it's kind of hard to restructure those synapses that you already have in your brains after a certain point. But it is possible. People believe what their parents tell them, and they typically go off of what their parents tell them. And this reminds me of something that was said in the TED Talk by Chimamanda Adichie, when she said, we're looking at, when we're talking to little kids, we're allowing the connection of masculinity and femininity, and it's not a good connection. We're saying like you can't be masculine if you're feminine, and like vice versa. So she was saying, what if we taught kids to not have the two linked, that you can be one and you can be the other, or you can be neither. You don't have to do any of these things. You can be you. You can just be a college student, and that's it. If that's what you want to call yourself and what you want to go by, then that's amazing. However, when we're young, we're not taught that. Girls wear dresses and girls wear pink, and guys play the sports, and guys have to be macho. And what if we stopped teaching kids that? What if we started them when they were young? What if we started talking about this in elementary school? What if women's study was brought up in elementary school? To really, when kids are, their brain is growing so much, and what if we're feeding them with, not false information, but appropriate information that could eventually change the world if everybody catches on to it? I think this is something we're seeing more and more nowadays, raising children gender neutral, or just kind of allowing kids to be more free in what they want to do. And in the TED Talk, Chimamanda Adichie said, what if in raising children we focused on ability and interest instead of gender? And I think that just, really hits the nail on the head when, if your child comes home and, he is supposed to be some macho kid that, doesn't wear pink dresses, but what if he hears about the ballet class that his school's offering? Then he comes home and he says, Mom, or Dad, this is something I want to do. And if the mom has an answer like, oh no, like you can't do that, that's something your sister can do, but you can go try out for football and, and potentially get all these brain injuries that can affect you later on in life. You can do that, but you can't be seen wearing a dress and tights and twirling around. Although his best talent in the world might be just that, dancing, and he could be, America's best dancer, but he's being held back from this. He's being shied away from this at such a young age, and will never know his full potential if we don't allow children to act on it. It gets shut down very early. And then the last reading was called Heterosexuality and Lesbian Existence by Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Existence by Adrienne Rich. So I think the language that was used in this essay was great, but the tone was kind of malicious, which is, there's no problem with that. She has every right to be writing maliciously. She has every right to be upset. But I just think it was rather interesting the way the message was being portrayed, and maybe I interpreted the message wrong. But with compulsory meaning, having an obligation, or something that's necessary to do, and heterosexuality being sex between a man and a woman, I picked up on that this heterosexuality is normal in society, or it's been so normalized that people think that it's been so imposed on us by all these patriarchal structures, that we think that it's natural, or we have to go by it because it's just it's constantly shoved in our faces, so we feel like we must live by that. And it's kind of trying perhaps trying to persuade women to be lesbians, or kind of try it out and realize how amazing that it can be, and that you can be fulfilled psychologically, sexually, emotionally from a woman, not just from a man. And in Hook's reading, she was talking about the institutionalization of feminism and how we need to have legit conversations with open-minded people, and there can be no coercion. And this kind of, with Rich's text, I picked up on that. Maybe she was trying to convince or coerce women to try out lesbianism, and maybe this is just my own opinion, but it was interesting. So I think the language was strong. It was all necessary to be said,